Traveling as an African in Africa is a logistical and financial nightmare. Geographically, the 54-nation continent is a huge landmass, and yet transport networks are not sufficiently developed. Consequently, it costs an arm and a leg to move from one country to another, in addition to overcoming challenges like currency differences, language barrier, and prohibitive visa requirements. A fortnight ago, I traveled from my country, Uganda, to Zimbabwe to cover the 2023 Rugby Africa Men Sevens tournament in Harare. On just flights, the 2,000-kilometer journey via two other capital cities cost my crew and I from Kawowo Sports about $500, an equivalent of 1.8 million Uganda shillings per person. For context, that's nearly twice as much as it would cost one to fly 2,500 kilometers from London to Istanbul. As a sports enthusiast, this is a major hindrance to enjoying and exploring a beautiful continent through sports tourism, a factor that the top administrators at Rugby Africa are well aware of.
We are aware that for £50 you can get from London to Paris or within the EU. So when they're putting together their models, the cost of traveling is a lot smaller. When we try to organize ourselves, for example, with World Rugby, with our governing bodies, it's difficult for them to understand that somebody leaving Dakar in Senegal to get to Madagascar, it may cost them $1,500, $1,800 for a player. And therefore, if you have a squad of 23 players, officials, 30 people going to travel, and we are hosting 10 teams or 15 teams, you can imagine that the cost, the overhead, is a complete nightmare. So one, we have been on a mission since late March, early April, to try and get this thing across to the world that the models that you use may not be that applicable to Africa because of the logistical problem that we have, which is very, very big. And then on another level, we are now shooting out at governments and seeing how they will now help pick up the cost, because we want to develop this beautiful game.
Rugby Africa, as Mensa revealed, is exploring ways of making its events more accessible to all through collaborations with governments to ease some of these restrictions. Similarly, government entities like Uganda's National Council of Sports are committed not only to supporting their national teams to travel and compete in these exciting events, but their citizen funds as well.
It's never easy to move around Africa because Africa is unique, that you can travel between two countries and your ticket expenses are as high as, for economy, as $800 or so. It's a challenge of of movement around Africa. I came here through Ethiopia, you can imagine. Some other group came through Rwanda, another, I think maybe some came through Kenya. There's no direct flight here. So that is bound to push the cost so high. We can't do so much. We have to support the team, but the fans have to support themselves. But we hope that as Africa continues to organize itself and open their borders, that we'll be able to have even more direct flights and be able to remove the visa requirements across countries that have more much cheaper tickets, because we also learned that most of these ticket costs are on landing costs levied by countries on other countries. So once those are addressed, then we should be able to have free movement. But also when the people come into whichever country it is, they will be able to bring money into that economy and make it vibrant and have very interesting activities of sport in those countries.
Admittedly, it's easier said than done, as there are lots of slow diplomatic and bureaucratic processes to be navigated in order to make African sport more accessible and affordable for Africans. But beside these challenges, I had an amazing experience at the 2023 Rugby Africa Men Sevens in Harare. And I would wish for other sports fans to enjoy a bit of that.